All right, welcome back to our series on coach-athlete relationships. I'm your host, Dr. Charles Inferna. I don't know if it's not really podcast stuff per se, but I suppose we could extract the audio, turn it into a little podcast series as well. But today, we're going to spend our time talking about the second C, or a second C of the 4 C's of coach-athlete relationships. We're going to talk a little bit about commitment today. Commitment's an interesting one because with all the nil stuff going around, let's see if we can find a good angle here. With all the nil stuff going around in college football, I don't really see it much in track per se, but I'm not an expert in nil and track athletes, so I'm not really sure. So I'm not really going to talk to that part of it, although I do have some thoughts. But commitment, essentially, 2 people, coach and athlete, are going to stay together, they're going to work together, and they're committed to each other, meaning they're going to collaborate, cooperate in order to, work towards athletes' goals, right? At, the Division III level, in all my years of coaching, I've never had an athlete leave my school I was coaching at, to go to another D3 school because of, we don't offer scholarships, and academic scholarships pretty much, what you're going to get at one SUNY school, you're going to get to the other SUNY school. Depends, but more often than not, it's pretty close. Same thing with the private schools. Now, I could only speak to Fredonia, NAS, and Alfred State, but it's never happened to me. I don't know if there's any coaches out there, throwing coaches, track coaches, D3 coaches, that have had athletes leave your school and go to another school for coaching change or what have you. I mean, I suppose it could happen. It's just probably not something that you see or hear about much in social media or anything, right? D1, yep, I can think of a few, but as far as the D3 level, I don't think it happens very often, although I may be wrong. But the commitment piece, right? So it's like committed relationship between 2 people, right? If you're talking like a marriage, you get a track marriage, or in this case a throwing marriage, where coach and athlete are going to stay together, and in the opportunity or possibility of post-collegiate aspirations, coach and athlete stay together and continue along their path, right? So they are committed to each other. Coach is committed to his athlete or her athlete. They're going to do their best to ensure that they're going to get their athletes where they want to go. And the athlete, in turn, is committed to their coach. Not necessarily bought in all the time. We're going to talk about that with another C. But they're committed to staying with them, right, in that relationship, and in the hopes and the aspirations of, accomplishing whatever goal they have, whatever they want to achieve. And the commitment piece, like I said, of the 4 C's, I don't know if it's the most important of the 4, but I think it's up there. If not one, certainly in the top 2, right? Like, we talked about communication, and communication obviously helps the commitment between coach and athlete. But if the athlete, for example, or a coach, I guess, depending on how you look at it, if one of them is not fully invested in the other, all of the best communication in the world might not be able to salvage that relationship, right? Just like a marriage, right? If one person in the marriage all of a sudden decides that they don't want to be committed anymore, and they want to, switch gears and, go separate ways, the other person in the relationship, in the marriage, really doesn't have much choice in that, right? If one spouse is going to file for divorce per se, the other spouse has, there's nothing they can do about it. right? So the choice is made for them. So in that instance, obviously, we're not talking about divorce here with coaching athletes, but it could be something like that, right? Where it could be traumatizing. There could be a lot of, hurt feelings, what have you, if one person decides that they're not going to stay committed to the other. And like I said, at the D3 level, really, there's not, I just can't think of anything off the top of my head and all the shenanigans of this part of the state as far as athletes' comings and goings and things with that, right? Like, I've had my share of athletes that we didn't get along all the time, which that's going to happen, I think, right? And honestly, like, I was never really concerned about like losing my job for an athlete. One, for the most part, I was volunteer all the time, so like, okay, I guess I could have been let go. But you don't see that happening very often with track or throwing, right? If the athlete becomes disenfranchised with what's happening, they're not committed to the program, they're not committed to their coach anymore, then they can leave, and there's really no harm to that, right? So, but of the four, I think commitment might be, if not one, definitely in the top two as far as what it takes to get athletes, where they need to go. And it's a perception thing also. And I talked about perception in another video, and somebody, mentioned, they made a a reply, if you will, about, I should watch Friday Night Lights because, communication between coach and athlete there as far as the television show, maybe it's not good, but the athletes still succeed. And I suppose that could be the case. I've watched Varsity Blues. We know what happens at the end there with Coach, Kilmer, as far as like how he treated his kids. Never seen Friday Night Lights, the television show. Friday Night Lights, the movie. Yep. There's a little bit of, not so much pleasant communication between coaches and athletes. But again, that's kind of, I don't want to say dramatized, but those are movies, right? Like, they're supposed to hook us in talking about, or wanting to watch the conflict and the struggle between two people or individuals, right? That's what keeps you coming back every episode, right? Just like As the World Turns, or Guiding Light, which my parents still watch. They're late 60s, like religiously, and I just spent some time with them in Florida, and like, we had to be home for them to watch that, and they're committed to it 100%. They're like bought into this show that they've been watching for like 40 years. But yeah, so anyway, enough of the rambling there, but I think you get the point about commitment, right? Two people are going to be mutually exclusive to each other, and in this case, the mutual exclusivity has to do with the relationship that they have in track and field, and more specifically throwing.